Hello everyone and welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. If you're here, it's because you love the raw, unfiltered moments behind the glamorous lights, and today's story is one of those moments that leaves a mark. Our focus is on Kagate Ulusoy and Hazal, two names that have carried entire generations of viewers through love, heartbreak, and fierce loyalty on screen. What was meant to be a routine day on the set of their new series turned into something none of them will forget. A rehearsal that started like any other became a terrifying spiral when an emotionally packed outdoor scene pushed Hazal beyond her limit. The day had been grueling long before the cameras rolled. Crew members say the sun over the shooting location was blinding and merciless. The script for that afternoon demanded repeated takes in blistering heat, and Hazal had been working without a proper break for days. She showed up with determination stamped across her face, but those who know her well noticed a heaviness in her movements, that quiet stillness she wears when exhaustion is trying to swallow her whole. The scene required her to draw deep from a well of sorrow and anger, tears, raised voice, a long walk across a courtyard under the relentless sky, and each time the director called cut, it looked like her shoulders sank a little further. A few minutes before everything unraveled, Hazal swayed between marks, blinking slowly, as if the world were drifting a second ahead of her. A makeup artist held out a bottle of water. An assistant stepped closer. She insisted she was fine. The slate clapped, the cameras panned, and then her body gave up on the performance. She went down in an instant, crumpling into the dust in front of a stunned team. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then chaos flooded the set. From across the yard, Kagate sprinted. He fell to his knees beside her, hands shaking, eyes wet, calling her name again and again. And then, in the thick of his panic, he blurted out in Turkish, "Beni suklama, don't blame me." The sentence hung in the heat like a crack of thunder, shocking everyone into even deeper silence. No one knew who he was talking to, or why those words were the ones that burst out of him, but the fear in his voice spoke of guilt, of pressure, of a weight he must have been carrying quietly for weeks. Filming stopped instantly. The set radio exploded with calls for the medic. Someone dialed for an ambulance. The crew closed in, but he wouldn't let go of her hand. Insiders later shared that Hazal had been pushing herself past the edge all week. Early call times that bled into late-night rehearsals, complicated emotional beats that demanded she relive pain again and again, and the relentless need to prove she could still be everything the audience expected. The weather had no mercy. Neither did the storyline. She had been open about being a perfectionist, it was part of her brilliance, and sometimes the very thing that wore her down. One crew member said softly that the scene they were shooting didn't feel like acting anymore. Her tears were too real, her voice too raw. After one take, her hands were trembling, and moments later, she was gone from consciousness. Photos taken by someone on set, later passed from phone to phone and then everywhere online, captured a raw tableau, Hazal lying still, a white towel beneath her head, and Kagate grasping her fingers like a lifeline, whispering the same plea as if it could undo the last minute. His face looked shattered, caught between terror and the need to fix what you can't fix with talent or charm. It was the image of a man who wanted to absorb another person's pain and couldn't. Even before this, the whispers had been building. Fans who followed every promo clip and behind-the-scenes snippet sensed an unusual tension between them. The chemistry was there, so much so that it sometimes frightened people. But so were the quiet exchanges, the clipped conversations, the way they avoided eye contact when they thought nobody was noticing. Sources on the set murmured about disagreements over scene intensity, over how far to push certain emotional lines, over the expectations from the production and the audience. These things happen when two actors hold a show together by their sheer gravity. They also happen when both care too much to let anything be ordinary. One person from the team put it this way. The scene that led to the collapse was brutal, and Hazal wasn't pretending. By the third take, her voice had gone hoarse, and the tears weren't cosmetic anymore. The air felt like it could break. Then, suddenly, she did. In that instant, Kagate's composure vanished. He panicked like a friend, like a partner, like someone who knew exactly how much she had given the scene and felt responsible for every ounce of it. The ambulance arrived fast. Paramedics checked her vitals while the crew stood frozen, with the heat radiating off the ground and the cameras lifeless on their tracks. They placed Hazal on a stretcher and lifted her into the vehicle with practiced calm, leaving behind lights still humming, an unfinished monologue, and an entire team with their breaths held. Minutes stretched. When the doors finally closed, Kagate remained. He didn't follow the ambulance. He stood there with red eyes and a clenched jaw, watching it pull away as if the road had stolen something from him. Only after it was entirely out of sight did he move, shoulders slumped, like a man waking up from a nightmare that still pressed on his chest. At the hospital, doctors ran tests and, after a long wait, offered a careful explanation. It wasn't a mysterious illness. It wasn't danger in the dramatic sense that fans fear when they read viral headlines. It was the cost accrued over days, stress layered upon stress, sleepless nights threaded through demanding days, heat that fried concentration, and performance after performance without a full reset. They called it an acute exhaustion event with emotional overload, a phrase that sounds clinical until you realize it means a person's body and heart hit their limit at the same time. Thankfully, nothing more sinister was found. She needed rest, quiet, hydration, and time away from the set. Her representative issued a short message to calm the storm that had already begun online. Hazal is stable, grateful for the care she received, and on doctor-ordered rest. She appreciates the love from her audience and asks for privacy while she recovers. It was the kind of statement that tries to sound unshakable but trembles around the edges because nobody in this business wants to admit how thin the line can be between dedication and collapse. Meanwhile, news broke that Kagate had quietly stepped back from shooting for a few days. No grand announcement, just an absence on the call sheet and a note that his scenes would be rescheduled. That same evening, he posted a short message to his social media that set the internet ablaze with speculation. "Silence can cut deeper than any line," he wrote. "Sometimes you carry a fault that isn't yours, and still you pay." It was vague enough to be polite and personal enough to feel like a confession. Fans flooded the comments, some pleading with him not to blame himself, others insisting there was more to the story, everyone trying to reach through a screen and touch the ache they believed they saw. The immediate question for the production became unavoidable: what happens now? The series had momentum, dates on a calendar, contractors and networks and viewers waiting. But the set, once so full of purpose, turned into a place that felt haunted by the echo of a body hitting the ground. Cameras were switched off, scripts left on chairs, and the clatter of crew work went muted. People spoke in whispers. Some cried in corners they thought were private. A few dared to joke gently, because humor keeps you standing, but even those voices dissolved into quiet. There was talk of a brief hiatus, then a slightly longer one, then a possible rewriting of the schedule if Hazal needed more time. Nobody wanted to push her. Nobody wanted to imagine the show without her. Support messages arrived in waves so massive they drowned the timeline. Fans posted old photos from their first legendary collaboration, remembered monologues that had made them fall in love with the pair, and wrote paragraphs about how certain characters had saved them in their own dark times. Many reached out to Kagate specifically, recognizing how visibly rattled he looked on set and how much pressure he had been under to hold the narrative together when the person he trusts most couldn't continue. A smaller but vocal chorus tried to defend him from the rumor mill's appetite, reminding everyone that a single shouted phrase shouldn't be spun into evidence of cruelty or blame. What matters, they argued, is that he was there, on his knees, holding her hand. This isn't the first time the public has tried to decode what lies between these two. From the moment they were paired years ago, people have called their chemistry a dangerous alchemy, capable of bending reality around it. Directors praise how they listen to each other between the lines. Crew remember the silence that falls when they lock eyes and everything else drops out of the room. Headlines have crowned them the gold standard of Turkish screen partnerships, and with that crown comes a burden. The love they portray on camera can begin to feel heavier than fiction, and living up to a myth is a full-time job nobody applies for. Behind the curtain, it is rarely romantic. It is early mornings and late nights, retakes until tears sting for reasons that have nothing to do with the scene, and the uneasy knowledge that every offhand comment can become a headline. Hazal, known for being disciplined and fiercely sensitive to the humanity of her characters, carries a deep empathy that can drain her dry. When she works, she dives until she finds the bottom. Sometimes the bottom moves. Kagate, protected by instinct and intense in his own quiet way, has a habit of absorbing the atmosphere around him like a sponge. If someone is hurting, he wears that hurt on his shoulders, even if it was never his to carry. Put the two together, add a heat wave, a relentless script, and 1,000 eyes waiting for magic, and you get the recipe for a moment like this. That day, after the ambulance disappeared, the set stood in a strange, holy hush. The crew didn't pack away the lights immediately. The director sat with his head in his hands. An assistant put a half-empty bottle of water on a crate and forgot it there. And in the middle of that suspended world, Kagate stayed until someone gently touched his arm and asked him to sit. He didn't want to leave before he knew she was settled. He kept watching that space on the road long after it made sense to do so, as if waiting might call the vehicle back. In the days since, the production has been non-committal about when filming will resume. They are in conversation with doctors, with the actors, with the network. There are contracts, yes, but there are also people, and the value of a series is measured in many ways. If they continue, it will be at a pace that respects the human heart beating inside the icon. If they pause, it will be a reminder that even legends are allowed to stop and breathe. No one wants to choose wrong. What we know is this: Hazal is resting, shielded by family and a small circle of friends, focusing on the quietly heroic work of healing. She is said to be frustrated, because that's who she is. She wants to be on set, to finish what she started, to give the audience the full force of her character. But she is also listening to the professionals around her, understanding that a comeback means nothing if it isn't sustainable. And as for Kagate, he is moving carefully through the aftermath, speaking less, feeling more, taking the kind of space you take when your heart got scared and you need to learn to trust the ground again. People will keep speculating about what he meant by that burst of Beni Suklama, and whether it points to arguments no one saw or blame that doesn't belong to anyone. The truth may be simpler. Sometimes the person closest to the fire thinks they should have been the shield. Sometimes love, whether it's the love of a colleague, a friend, a creative partner, or the tender loyalty built over years, makes you reach for a guilt that promises control. If it was his way of saying he wished he could have spared her, then the sentence already contains its own answer: the heart is heavy, and he wanted to carry more of it. Fans, for their part, have organized messages of encouragement for both of them, threading old memories with new promises. They remember how their characters once taught them to hope, and they want to return the favor now. In private, a crew member said they've never seen a set so united, so protective, and so ready to wait. When the cameras do whir to life again, the first slate will clap in a room full of people who know exactly what it costs to make something beautiful and what it means to protect the people who make it. We began with a collapse, but the story isn't a tragedy. It's a reckoning. It's a reminder that the strongest screen partnerships are built not only on fireworks, but on the quiet courage to stop when the body says stop, to speak when the soul says speak, and to hold on when the person beside you goes still. That day on set began like any other and ended with everything paused in midair. Now the pause has meaning. And when they return, because that is the hope humming under every whisper, their work will carry a tenderness born of this moment. Thank you for staying with Turkish Spotlight Secrets until the end of this story. Take care of yourselves, send the gentlest thoughts toward Hazal Kaya and Kagate Ulusoy as they recover, and meet me here again soon, where we'll keep watching the light and the shadow, and telling the truths that live between them.